was in the Situation Room monitoring what our brave men were doing to make it clear that we don't let anybody attack us.
Tonight on Politics Now, in a return trip to Las Vegas, Hillary Clinton attacks Donald Trump over national security and paints a bleak picture of a Trump presidency.
It's a rigged system, and we're going to beat it. We're going to beat it.
Donald Trump also makes a return trip to Nevada ahead of Election Day, this time in Reno. What he had to say about polls staying open for early voting in Clark County.
And early voting is finished here in Nevada. We'll break down the numbers, what it means for the down ticket races.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now with Steve Sebelius and Patrick Walker.
Here we go. The election just 2 days away now, and a record number of people have already early voted in Nevada this year. Thanks for joining us. I'm Patrick Walker.
And I'm Steve Sebelius. Friday night at the Cardenas Market on Bonanza and Lamb, the line stretched around the building well after the polls were scheduled to close. It was estimated more than 1,000 people in the largely Hispanic neighborhood were still in line. It was one of several locations that stayed open late so everyone could vote. The county allowed voting even if people were getting in the line after the posted closing time for early vote locations, which Clark County says is allowed under state law.
All right, so let's dig into those early voting numbers. More than 769,000. You can see just 2 away from 770. Ballots have been cast already. That means more than 324,000 of those were registered Democrats, more than 238,000 registered Republicans. That gives Democrats about a 45,000 vote lead statewide.
In Clark County, the Democratic lead is more pronounced. Democrats are ahead of Republicans by more than 72,000 votes. That's similar to the numbers in 2012 when Barack Obama won the state by 7 points.
Well, let's first point out that Democrats, of course, tend to vote early. Republicans tend to wait until Election Day to do so. But that big lead in Clark County, I think, would mean an uphill battle for the Republicans, for Crescent Hardy trying to keep his job, for Joe Heck at the Senate, and for Danny Tarkanian in CD3.
Yeah, absolutely. I should say I am a traditionalist as well. I vote with the Republicans on Election Day. But the early returns on Election night will probably look really good for Ruben Kewen and for Jackie Rosen. Joe Heck may have some scary moments initially when those polls close as well.
Well, about 20% of that vote that we talk about are independents. So would there be a big enough swing possible to swing at least nationally for Trump?
Wow, that would be a lot. I mean, Mitt Romney won independence in 2012, but he still lost the state to Barack Obama. Trump would need an overwhelming number of independents, I think, to swing the entire election here in Nevada. That doesn't seem like it's likely to happen.
Well, Donald Trump's rally in Reno on Saturday had plenty of excitement. Trump rushed off the stage at one point by Secret Service.
A scuffle broke out in the audience. One man was detained. Witnesses said a protester tried to put up a sign and someone else yelled the word gun. Nobody was injured, and Trump returned to the stage shortly after the incident to thank the Secret Service. He went on to speak about those lines staying open for early voting in Clark County.
It's being reported that certain key Democratic polling locations in Clark County were kept open for hours and hours beyond closing time to bus and bring Democratic voters in. Folks, it's a rigged system. It's a rigged system, and we're going to beat it. We're going to beat it.
State Party GOP Chairman Michael McDonald also blasted Clark County for leaving the polls open, saying they did it so, quote, a certain group could vote. Trump went on to tout the packed crowds at his rally as proof he would win, saying he doesn't need help to fill an arena.
We didn't bring any so-called stars along. We didn't need them. You know, the reason Hillary has to do that is nobody comes for her deal. She can't fill a room. We can get stars. We don't need them because we just want to make America great again, and we know what to do. Right? We don't need that. That's almost like a form of cheating, right?
Well, Steve, I think the question now for Donald Trump, what has to happen to pull out Nevada? We talked about the independents would have to be a landslide, but it seems like quite a formula has to happen.
Yeah, it would take just an overwhelming voter turnout on Election Day. one that breaks radically with the last two election cycles, 2008, 2012. He'd also have to win independents by a really, really large margin in order to be able to overcome, I think, what the Democrats have established as a firewall so far.
Well, of course, we'll address this later on in the show as well, but that talk of rigged elections, does that discourage people from coming out and voting?
Well, first we should say there really isn't any evidence of rigged elections, and we'll talk about it more later in the broadcast. But let's entertain, just for the purposes of argument, to say if Trump loses, he can use that explanation to basically say, well, that's why I lost. That's why somebody with my winning temperament, who always wins, and you're going to get sick of my winning, has lost this election. But having told his supporters that the election is rigged, what happens if he actually won? He's already, he's in a way, he's casting doubt on the legitimacy of his own election, because if the system is rigged, well, you can't have it both ways. It's either rigged or it's not. Hint, it's not.
All right. Well, on Wednesday, Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton was back here in Las Vegas trying to shore up votes at a union hall. She attacked Republican nominee Donald Trump, on many points, including national security.
On the day that we brought Osama bin Laden to justice, I was in the Situation Room monitoring what our brave men were doing to make it clear that we don't let anybody attack us. It may take a while, but we will keep going after them. Donald Trump was hosting Celebrity Apprentice.
Clinton went on to urge the crowd to imagine a world where Donald Trump is president, then cited comments that more countries should have nuclear weapons and comments that the military is a disaster. Senate candidate Catherine Cortez Masto also joined her on stage, and Clinton continued the attack on Trump for not promising to accept the election results.
We were on the debate stage right here in Las Vegas for the last debate. And we were asked if we would respect the outcome of the election. I will. He refused to say he would.
Well, Steve, is this turning into a doomsday campaign? Both sides are predicting just apocalyptic things if the other side wins.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Clinton's comments came just after she said she wanted to be a candidate that people vote for, and not just someone whom people settle for because they're voting against the other person. And then she went and listed, all of these terrible, terrible things that Donald Trump would bring about if he was elected. So. It's probably not surprising, given that we have two of the most disliked candidates in the entire country. This campaign has resulted in a lot of negativity.
Well, we've seen Hillary bringing out the big name surrogates. Bernie Sanders, just the latest high-profile one, was here today. Especially with millennials, I would think that having Bernie come to town and these high profiles would help early voting turnouts.
Absolutely. If you're a fan of President Obama, if you're a fan of Senator Sanders, if you're a fan of any of the entertainers that Hillary Clinton brings out, I think you do go out there, and you probably are motivated to early vote, especially when they come during that early voting period of time, and you can literally leave the rally and go either that day or the next day to an early voting location and cast your ballot.
Well, real quick before we move on, where have the Republicans been with the big surrogates? We've seen a few lately in the last 5 or 6 days before, but where have they been? I mean, obviously there's distancing from Donald Trump, but there are other big Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen recently Newt Gingrich, and we've seen Rudy Giuliani, but really they haven't had any. I think, Trump mentioned, well, Hillary kind of cheats by bringing celebrities. I think Trump thinks that he is the biggest celebrity from his own shows, and so he doesn't need somebody else to fill the arena because he can do it himself with his own celebrity. So maybe that explains why he hasn't brought out a lot of people. And
we'll see if the down ballot ticket, if they'll be gaining or losing on that as well for Republicans, because they haven't had the big names really here either, say for the last week or so. Well, speaking of looking down the ballot, we commissioned another poll this week of 600 likely voters. We do want to take a look at that poll by JMC Analytics. Let's take a look first at, here it is right there, the presidential horse race. We are showing this as a dead heat in Nevada so far, tied at 45%. Among those who have already voted, Clinton had a 10% point over Trump, and those who said they are likely to vote on Election Day, Trump had a 10-point lead over Clinton.
In the Senate race, Democrat Catherine Cortez Masto has a slight 2-point lead over Republican Joe Heck, but that 2 points is within the margin of error. Among those who say they have already voted, Cortez Masto had a 50 to 42% lead, not quite as large as Clinton's. And among those who plan to vote on Tuesday, Election Day, Heck had a 4-point lead, 44 to 40%, also smaller than Trump's projected advantage on Tuesday.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that Senate race, specifically with Face the Nation host John Dickerson on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
This is an individual who mocked a disabled reporter.
I don't know what I said.
Who attributed a reporter's questions to her menstrual cycle.
Blood coming out of her wherever.
I haven't endorsed Mr. Trump, and frankly, I've made a commitment.
She ate like a pig.
Let's be very, very clear. I do not support Trump.
Donald Trump has created a toxic atmosphere.
He's a Mexican.
Claiming a person can't do their job because of their race is sort of like the textbook definition of a racist comment.
Priorities USA Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Over 20,000 Nevadans rely on Planned Parenthood for access to basic health services and critical cancer screenings. But Congressman Heck voted to defund Planned Parenthood and was willing to shut down the government over it. Heck opposed Roe v. Wade and voted to criminalize abortion. Congressman Heck is what's wrong with Washington. DSCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? And you can tell them to go themselves.
You know, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever.
You got to see this guy. I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember.
Over 2,000 police officers from all across Nevada support Question 1. I'm one of them. I support Question 1 because it will help save lives.
Question 1 protects gun rights and does something urgently needed. It closes the background check loophole and keeps guns out of dangerous hands. States that have closed the loophole have seen fewer police officers shot and killed in the line of duty. It won't end all gun violence, but it will save lives. That's a fact. Protect our families and police. Yes on 1.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
Well, welcome back. The presidential race, certainly not the only one on the ballot. Of course, we're also talking about shoring up the Senate. It's important for both sides. For Republicans, it's a chance to try to build up that firewall in the Senate if Clinton is elected president. I had a chance to speak with Face the Nation host and political director for CBS, John Dickerson, about that topic earlier this week. Well, of course, we have a lot of talk about the presidential race, but also we can't forget about the Senate race. Let's talk a little bit about balance of power, just from your feeling and the polls you've seen. Where are we at right now?
Well, it's tight in terms of balance of the power and control in the Senate, and that's one of the big things we'll be watching on election night. Is there was a period around the third debate when we were all out there, and the Democrats were feeling pretty good about being able to regain control of the Senate, but I think it's now really right on the nice edge in terms of whether a lot of those incumbent Republicans are going to be able to survive.
When you talk about the Senate race as well, you know, a lot of eyes on the Nevada Senate race, the race to replace Harry Reid's seat and possibly flip that red. From the national perspective, is it as big as we make it out to be here in Nevada?
Well, sure. Any seat the Republicans can flip to red is a big deal because it helps them fight back the tide against a map where there are a lot of places where purple states where, and Nevada's one of them, but purple states where they have, Nevada's not one of them in this context, which is purple states where they have incumbent Republicans. So in New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, Florida, Ohio, all states where there are, tough races in a tough environment. So any state where they can reverse Republicans can pick up one is a big deal because they expect to lose in some states.
Some 25 million people have voted early. What is that? Can we gain any glimpse into what's going to happen this election based on such a large number of early voters nationwide?
Well, no. I mean, Because what's happened, it's hard to tell. So in some states where you have different kinds of turnout, in Florida and North Carolina, the voting rules are different this time around than they were last time for early and absentee voting. So some of the fall off in African American voters would be a big problem for Democrats, and may indeed be a big problem for Democrats, except for the fact that 19 polling places didn't come online right away, and a couple of them in very heavily African American districts. So it may not be that there is a lower turnout. It may just be that the vote comes in later because African Americans couldn't vote. In Florida, there have also been changes. So it's hard to tell. And also it's hard to tell whether absentee voting, which is up among Republicans in Florida, are all of those Republicans voting for Donald Trump? We don't know. So it's the campaigns in a place like Colorado, where it's all mail-in ballots. They're with the targeting that they have, the campaigns are going to start to feel like in Colorado and Nevada by this weekend, we may see some bets made off the record from the campaigns about whether they think they're going to lock it in. And I know that the Clinton folks were feeling pretty good about the way things were going in Nevada and Colorado. But let's see where we are this weekend.
John Dickerson will be providing analysis right here on CBS all night long on Tuesday.
And Face the Nation airs right here on Channel 8 every Sunday morning at 8:30.
Coming up, a serious accusation. Senator Harry Reid accusing the FBI's director of violating the Hatch Act. Steve digs into that accusation coming up. And more high-profile surrogates in town. We'll give you a recap of who was here pandering for your vote for their candidate this week. Stay with us.
Catherine Cortez Masto's negligence left thousands of rape kits untested and rapists on the street.
In other states, they've convicted hundreds of rapists by testing these kits. But Catherine Cortez Masto failed to act.
And when she did act, Cortez Masto voted to allow murderers out of jail early. She even pardoned domestic violence abusers. Don't let Harry Reid force another political failure on Nevada. Senate Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I'm Catherine Cortez Masto. I know some people are so disgusted with politics they think their vote doesn't matter. But we can't just sit on the sidelines when so much needs to be done. I know that working together, we can make progress. As Attorney General, I brought Democrats and Republicans together to fight sex trafficking and drug dealers. And I took on the big banks who took advantage of Nevada homeowners. I approve this message because in Washington, I'll work with anyone to solve problems for Nevada.
Over 2,000 police officers from all across Nevada support Question 1. I'm one of them. I support Question 1 because it will help save lives.
Question 1 protects gun rights and does something urgently needed. It closes the background check loophole and keeps guns out of dangerous hands. States that have closed the loophole have seen fewer police officers shot and killed in the line of duty. It won't end all gun violence, but it will save lives. That's a fact. Protect our families and police. Yes on 1.
Monday on Good Day, hours away from Election Day.
We will be live as people get ready to head to the polls and pick the next president of the United States.
We'll have everything you need to know about the candidates and questions on the Nevada ballot.
And you're going to want to vote yes for your forecast.
That's right. Temperatures holding steady above normal the second week in November in your Weather Now forecast.
Also, one of the Valley's leaders will be joining us in studio.
We're getting your questions answered during Monday mornings with the mayors, Monday on Good Day.
Well, Nevada Senator Harry Reid waded back into the presidential race recently. He accused FBI Director James Comey of violating the Hatch Act for sending that letter to Congress about the new emails found on Anthony Weiner's laptop. Now, the Hatch Act, of course, is a Depression-era law that prohibits government employees from using their offices to interfere with or affect an election. But that's a much different tune than the Democrats were singing back in July.
There was an extensive, as you know, Brett, investigation by the FBI under the direction of a wonderful and tough career public servant, Jim Comey.
This is a great man. We are very privileged in our country to have him be the director of the FBI.
No one can question the integrity, the competence.
Now, Reid was the final speaker in that lineup. He ended his letter with a rather stinging rebuke. Quote, "Please keep in mind that I have been a supporter of yours in the past when Republicans filibustered your nomination and delayed your confirmation longer than any previous nominee to your position. I led the fight to get you confirmed because I believe you to be a principled public servant. With the deepest regret, I now see that I was wrong. But at least 3 former federal prosecutors told me there was no case for a Hatch Act violation on Comey's part. One said Comey was acting well within his authority when he wrote his letter to Congress. And just today, Comey wrote a second letter to Congress saying the FBI had completed its review of the new emails and had not changed its conclusion from July that no charges would be filed against Clinton. Patrick?
All right, Steve, it's time for the race now, where we go over the other big local stories happening this week. And I don't have to tell you, it was a busy one. Former President Bill Clinton back in town campaigning for his wife with celebrity DJ Steve Aoki. Clinton gave a speech at the Cox Pavilion, followed by an Aoki concert. He focused his very brief speech on millennials, telling the crowd the future is in their hands.
I want you to claim your future. I want you to finish this election strong. I want you to go see every friend you've got, and don't let anybody sit on the sidelines.
Well, Donald Trump Jr. was in Las Vegas campaigning with Newt Gingrich for his dad on Thursday. He spoke at Ahern Equipment Rental, told the crowd that to make sure they vote and send a message to Washington, D.C. that enough is enough.
We're fed up of the lies. We're fed up of the deceit. We're fed up of the false promises. We're going to shake up the cartel in D.C. We're going to show them that we mean business, and it's time to drain the swamp.
Trump Jr. also went on to call call Clinton the most corrupt candidate in history. And Senate candidate Catherine Cortez Masto voted early at Cardenas Market, although not on the final day with the long lines. But she used the opportunity to bash her opponent Joe Heck's refusal to say who he's voting for.
He really is desperate, and he's trying to save his political career based on how well Donald Trump is doing at the time. And I think people will decide for themselves.
Well, Heck was questioned about his support for Trump this week after he said Hillary Clinton is disqualified from being commander-in-chief because she failed to protect classified information. Although Heck insists his position on the presidential race has not changed, his spokesman declined to answer directly when Politics Now asked via email for whom Heck would cast his vote for in the presidential contest. Heck said he could no longer support Trump a few weeks ago when an audio recording was released about Trump talking about groping women. Well, Steve, do you think Trump supporters who are mad at Heck for withdrawing support for Trump are just going to hold their noses and vote for Heck anyway?
Yeah, I think some of them will. Some of them will come home on that vote. But, Heck's advertising has tried to tie Catherine Cortez Masto to Harry Reid for that reason. I think hatred of Reid might overcome their being upset at Heck about what he did. But there's some people who were very upset by it, and I think that blowback is still going to be a factor in the race.
All right, well, you have heard the candidates complain about how this election is rigged, so we wanted to know, is it even possible? We explore that possibility and just how tough it would be to pull it off. Coming up next.
We hear numerous calls, a child who is hit in a poorly defined crosswalk, something that we deal with as first responders on a very regular basis. As parents, it's something that just tears at your heart. Vote yes on 5.
Reuben Kewin, his political career clouded by corruption. His mentor under FBI investigation for kickbacks. His lobbyist boss tied to that same investigation. His firm's clients, payday lenders accused of targeting active duty soldiers. A Purple Heart recipient fell prey. Kewin looked the other way. Stop Reuben Kewin. He's in it for the money, not the middle class. There's no telling what he'd do in Congress. The NRCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
The American moment is here. 2 choices, 2 Americas, decided by you. Hillary Clinton will keep us on the road to stagnation. Fewer jobs, rising crime, America diminished at home and abroad. Donald Trump will bring the change we're waiting for. America, better, stronger, more prosperous for everyone. A plan for tomorrow, a future brighter than our past. The choice is yours.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
With all of the shenanigans Danny Tarkanian's pulled in Nevada, helping set up fake charities used to scam Nevada seniors, failing to pay thousands in property taxes, losing $17 million in a failed development scheme, then sticking taxpayers with the bill. Imagine the shenanigans Tarkanian would pull in Washington. It's why we can't afford Tarkanian in Congress, ever. DCCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
One of the most important parts about question 5 is that the funds raised here will be staying here. Another important part about this question is the transparency and the accountability of these dollars that will be raised. They are specifically earmarked for projects within our community. Vote yes on 5.
We've heard Donald Trump repeatedly say that the election is rigged. Dr. Brian Calfano, a Missouri State University professor and political analyst at our affiliate station in Southwest Missouri, took a close look at his claims.
Donald Trump is telling supporters he's worried that the presidential election will be rigged to give Hillary Clinton the win. But the Republican nominee and his supporters should take heart that rigging an election, meaning secret forces conspiring to alter the vote count, is almost impossible in a country where the elections are run by 51 separate entities. Consider this. The president is elected by voters in all 50 states and Washington, D.C. Each state has its own rules for how and when a person votes. The nation's 3,200 county clerks are responsible for maintaining accurate voter rolls, and thousands of poll workers around the country monitor and compare signatures in the voter rolls for their individual precincts. Meanwhile, secretaries of state in each state must then certify the results. The point is not that efforts to cheat don't happen. It's that for Trump's conspiracy theory to hold water, the so-called riggers would have to enlist the help of either thousands of ordinary Americans who help run state elections, many of whom are Republicans, by the way, or predict which state will be the swing state that puts Clinton over the Electoral College threshold of 270. Either one is a long shot if you're playing the odds. Add to this that there have only been about 31 possible examples of voter fraud out of the more than 1 billion U.S. ballots cast in the past 14 years. And it seems that Trump's concern is misplaced.
That was Brian Calfano from our affiliate in the Ozarks. So will voters accept the results? A poll by CBS released Friday said 3 in 4 voters said they would probably accept the official results as legitimate, even if their preferred candidate is not the winner. Patrick?
All right, Steve. Well, hey, there is just one thing to watch the next week. Of course, it is a big one. We're talking about, you guessed it, election night. We'll be updating